The harder the conflict, the greater the triumph.
A fiercest serpent may be overcome by a swarm of ants.
Lead me, follow me, or get out of my way. Age wrinkles the body, quitting wrinkles the soul.
Battle buddies.
Battle buddies.
So, as you know, we're internationally successful. And so we've been paying thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for these focus groups. And I just fucking need something from you, Spencer, because you're not trending well with our focus groups, because they don't find it relatable that there's like this 8-foot tall muscular man with 3% body fat who's really charming. Like we need to humanize you
Me?
for this podcast. Yeah, you.
You just made me sound nothing like how I look.
Yeah. Your biceps are enormous.
I do, but I look. It's more like a.
Don't try to play down. Don't. This is what I'm talking about. I'm humble too. Oh yeah, it's great. So we need some like
All right,
pet
well,
peeves that make you sound bad.
How do I? Okay.
Like some sound bites for this. Trying to make you relatable. I'm trying to increase our brand.
Things that make me just normal, like a person. Like,
Yeah. Like I always brush my left tooth first. I don't know.
I don't. Camping is like the equivalent of the top ramen food, because 7 out of 10 times that you go camping or eat top ramen, it's not really by choice. You like have to do it.
Yeah.
That's the conclusion that I've come up with. So all those people out there that are just like what I used to be like, walking around in your North Face jackets being like, I love the outdoors. Maybe you don't love the outdoors as much as you think you do.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I do love the outdoors though.
I like the outdoors, but it's like when I'm by myself and not
Okay.
surrounded by like a crowd of people. Did you know the last time that I, 7 years ago when I had an iPhone, weird, I used Apple Maps to get to Yosemite, and it was categorized as a amusement park.
Wow.
Yosemite.
Thanks, Meta. They're not Meta. That's Facebook.
So does that humanize me? I don't like camping as much as I thought I did.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. You don't have any like pet peeves? What do people do that like really annoy you that shouldn't?
I'm not super into road ragers, people who get upset on the road.
Okay.
So that's not great for me. I'm not into that at all, really.
Yeah. You get road rage at people getting road rage.
That's it.
Yeah.
I'm a hypocrite. There we go. I'm a hypocrite.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe that'll trend better. We'll see. We'll check back in.
As we go through the episode, I'll try to find little things.
Yeah,
but,
that'd be useful.
yeah. That's funny, dude. You've been thinking about that? You're like, Spencer needs to be lamer.
I'm just reading through these focus groups reports.
I also think it's funny that you said international success, and I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's international success. I think it's just international.
Just someone outside the U.S. has listened to us.
Dude, the country that is like the most listeners, second to the United States, Germany.
Wow. Thank you, Germany. Happy to be here.
How do you say thank
There?
you?
Danke.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dankeschön.
Dankeschön, yeah.
That's it. I'm over here with the last name Schultz, and I don't know how to say thank you in German. Unreal. Only took
Cool.
3 years in high school.
Hey, we got to play Secret Hitler soon. That's a fun game.
I was telling my buddy Alan about that.
Yeah.
How you were like, it's fun to figure out what's Secret Hitler?
Secret Hitler's an actual board game, not the game that I play. That's very inappropriate.
I thought you were talking. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes. All right, listeners, there's a game that I play with my buddy when we run, which is, would this person in our life have been a Nazi? And it's not our proudest game.
It's important. This is an important distinction to make. He's not saying that this person is a Nazi.
No.
He's saying back in time, if they were in Nazi Germany, would they have been able to subscribe to the indoctrination of Nazism?
There is nuance to this game that we play, yeah.
Yeah. For instance, my wife would have died. She would have not been a Nazi.
She would have done very poorly. She would have done very poorly.
Yeah.
And she has a very distinctive voice.
All right. So we're off to a really good start here. I did watch this movie last night which has something to do with Vietnam. It's called The Post. Have you seen it?
No.
So it's a Steven Spielberg movie with Tom Hanks and one of those famous females.
This is trending well.
Meryl Streep.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
That's one you should forget.
And it's about The Washington Post about to drop an article of, have you ever heard of the Pentagon Papers?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so it's all about the Washington Post dropping that and like being a, possibly going to prison because it's technically top secret information.
Yeah, that was a big deal.
Very big
So
deal.
how was the movie? I remember the previous to
Oh,
that.
dude, first of all, like, I love movies about literature,
Yeah.
whether it be journalism or just like authors or whatever. So super into that. The only extracurricular thing I did in high school was write for my school paper.
Nice.
So I loved it. Spielberg is the guy. And it was just interesting to learn about that time. I mean, we're already kind of knee deep in Vietnam, so it was nice to get that little extra, as if I needed more information to know that Vietnam was a huge mistake.
Yeah.
I got it.
You got there now.
I'm here. Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Battle Buddies.
Welcome to Battle Buddies.
We are on episode 2 of the Drang Valley.
Drang. So, welcome to day 2 of the Battle of Drang. We're going to deep dive into the first few hours of contact on November 14th. Now that the air cavalry had their landing zone decided, X-ray, they had to prep the area for their landing. Matt Dillon described this time as the hairiest part of any operation was always the air assault. We had to time the flight and the artillery so close. When the choppers were 1 minute out, the last artillery rounds had to be on their way, or you get Hueys landing with shells. We always sweated because if you shut down the artillery too soon, the enemy could be up and waiting when the choppers came in. This one was precisely on time. So remember, listeners, the point of the cavalry was to fly these Hueys, which are air helicopters, in at treetop level at over 100 miles per hour into enemy lines. If this sounds like some Wild West 12-year-old nonsense, you are not wrong. Pilots, or at least Bruce Crandall, would switch his M16 to, as he calls it, rock and roll mode, which is fully automatic, and fire out of his window as he landed. This was also crazy because the Hueys had to do a flared landing. See, the Hueys could not afford to spend time slowing down, so the pilots would throw the nose of the Huey into the air at the last second, sending the tail down. This quickly reduced their speed so that they could land. At this point, you might be asking, why did the air cavalry go through all of this drama on their entrance? And the answer is that this was not an old school flank. Traditionally, a flank is a group of fast soldiers or mounted soldiers who make a giant L shape on the battlefield to hit their opponents from their side. This means that all of the cavalry go together. For the air cavalry, though, they had to be shuttled in over several minutes by multiple helicopters. Therefore, their most vulnerable moments were when only some of the cavalry were on the ground.
Yeah, and so is it safe to say that them landing and taking off quickly like that was just because they had no idea how many people that were surrounding them?
Yeah, they had no idea, and it was just like they had to get them down so they could get those helicopters out so they can go pick up more and go drop them back in.
Yeah, wow. That sounds terrifying.
Yeah.
And especially the little, I'm going to call it like a combat landing, how they're not reducing speed really, right?
No. From how they describe it, like, no, they don't fucking reduce the speed.
They're just changing the way that the helicopter is so that they can land properly and then bounce off. I wonder how many seconds are they on ground before they take off?
It changes depending on if it's hot or not. And then we'll talk about it as it's pretty fast for the first few. Like they get them off and they go. And they do it really fast. That's what they've been training for.
Right.
But as it goes on, they end up taking longer because we'll talk about this on part 3. But Bruce Crandall gets super fucking pissed at the medevac helicopters. And so he ends up staying longer so he can take the wounded off himself because he just is that guy. Yeah, we'll talk about it a little bit at the end of this episode. And then really next episode, we're getting into Bruce Crandall being
really positive stuff.
All right. So Bruce Crandall led Hal and the other first group into X-ray with no issues. This battlefield can get confusing, so let's set up easy reference points to come back to. The landing field was about 100 yards east to west funnel. The mouth of the funnel was to the west near a very important dry creek bed. The Chupong Massif was to the southwest and northwest of their position. Hal sent out his troops to begin scouting the area and to get ready for action. It turns out that Colonel An, who is the North Vietnamese colonel at the time, he was standing on that same Chupong Massif, and I just imagine in my head that he has like binoculars and is like staring at them because he's literally watching them all land. He had a mobile command group that was floating around this area waiting for Americans to bring an attack. They had observation towers around the mountains that were relaying information about where the helicopters were landing. But we were getting ahead of ourselves. Right before Crandall's Huey brought the second batch of soldiers, the rest of Bravo Company, 3rd Platoon of Alpha Company, and Captain Nadal's command group, a Korean War veteran ranger named Mingo, just captured a prisoner. Hal rushed over and asked him, "How many of you are there?" He gets back this translated message. He says there are 3 battalions on the mountain who want very much to kill Americans, but have not been able to find any.
Damn.
So like the most metal, like cinematic thing you could say at the start of a battle. Like no one's died yet.
Fuck around and find out.
This Korean War vet tackles this guy is like, he had no food, no water, no weapon. Like they don't know what he was doing out. They still don't know what he was doing out there. And he gets like literally tackled by this Korean War vet who I assume was a linebacker and brings him over. And he's like shaking this small man in front of him. They said he couldn't have been like even 20 years old. And they want very much to kill Americans, but have not been able to find any.
I'm pretty surprised that he straight up was like, "There's like 3 battalions of men."
Yeah, right.
That's how much, and says it pretty confidently.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And Hal talked a little bit about like interrogation tactics that he had learned through the Korean War, which was interesting. Like they don't bother anymore with. I mean, so what Hal was saying is, don't bother with interrogations. Just ask the real question: is how many of you are there, and where are you?
I wonder. So, did he have a what if they don't answer scenario?
He didn't. He didn't really say. I think he made Vietnam in this time. I think he was gonna find a way to get an answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was also thinking when you said, a Korean War vet goes over. It's just interesting to think about that because growing up in high school and all that stuff, when you're learning about the Vietnam War, you're not like, well, a lot of these guys were Korean War vets,
right?
And now I'm in my mind thinking like, God, how exhausted must you be as a Korean War vet being like, all right, cool, Korean War is over. Now we have to go to Vietnam. It's like,
well, and I don't think when you learn about Vietnam War, most of them were Korean War vets. I think it's only this first couple years, this first like year or two, because they thought it was just a continuation. World War II, the Korean War, and this is the next one.
And it's the same kind of thing. It's split into like a North and South.
Right.
Yikes.
But it just wasn't. And this guy was a ranger, so it wasn't like he didn't see combat in Korea.
Yeah.
He saw, like I assume he saw all the combat. Ranger certifications or whatever it is. I think that's real intense.
Ranger Indoctrination School. That's literally what it's called, bro.
That was great. Okay. For a sense of how fast things were moving, I believe it has only been around 30 minutes from when the first Hueys landed so far. So it's only been 30 minutes. We've already had Hueys land twice. Hal is already out there trying to form like a perimeter. He's having people scouting, and they've already tackled some kid who just told them like devastating news, but also like what their mission was for. So I imagine they were also kind of excited at this moment. They're like, there's people we can kill, because I guess that's what they're trying to do.
Search and destroy, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of the name of the game.
Right. It wasn't search out the enemy and destroy
That's
him.
it.
Yeah, crazy. So Hal's priority immediately became having Alpha Company securing the landing zone while Bravo Company searched to the northwest for the enemy. This may seem counterintuitive to you. It did to me as well. Hal explained his thinking that this football field-sized clearing was our lifeline and our supply line. If the enemy closed the way to the helicopters, all of us would die in this place. Therefore, Hal wanted to engage the enemy as far out as he could to keep his landing zone safe. So I had some questions on this, and I'll kind of I'll summarize this for listeners that didn't quite understand what I was saying there. Basically, now that Hal knows that there's a ton of enemies, right? He's now understood that there's at least 1,500. He is having his like Alpha Squadron like really move out. Like he's trying to force an engagement super far out. And to me, I would be like, no, let's hunker in, and then like let's slowly expand our perimeter if we can. And he's saying, you don't want people anywhere near your landing zone. And like my worry would be like, wouldn't like one of your little groups just get overrun? Like, isn't that your worry? But I guess, like, how do you work through those kind
No,
of
so
decisions?
because I think that from his point of view, these people, this is you're coming into their territory.
Sure.
So they would obviously be already like sunken in, like you were saying that they have observation posts and
Right.
observation towers and things like that. So they have very permanent things there that aren't necessarily a mobile idea of like, oh, let's just like kind of walk around and go and attack them. I think they're waiting to be found.
Oh, okay.
That's my mind.
Okay.
That's what my mind is. Especially if they have this like whole search and destroy mentality,
Right.
which because I understand what your logic is saying too. Like,
Yeah, but for how like, and I reread it yesterday and today. I reread that part twice, and he was saying like his goal was to have his lines hit contact early and far out from his landing zone, and that he was just assuming that they could deal with it. But that's kind of a thing that saves them a lot, is that they really just trust every soldier. Like their private first class soldiers do amazing things in this battle, and like that's kind of cool.
yeah, I mean when we go into it, the ratio of I mean when all is said and done, this is technically could be considered a success. No,
Yeah, I think
as far as
overall
yeah,
it's a
yeah,
success.
yeah. So
This part of it,
right,
this first couple days. All right, in the media we consume, the start of a battle is very dramatic and clear. A single shot rings out, a soldier falls in slow motion, and the rest of the soldiers start doing soldier things in a way that normal folk can understand. And it turns out, while it is very dramatic, modern battles are anything but clear. A little after noon, B Company starts to take fire in the creek bed to the northwest of the landing zone. Denby's 1st Platoon and Herrick's 2nd Platoon were ordered to go out west with Herrick's platoon as the right flank. 3rd Platoon would be a reserve for them as they moved. Denby gets pinned down hard and orders Herrick to come up on his right flank to relieve the pressure. Remember, the North Vietnamese knew that these areas incredibly well. They've been training on them. They used some small trails that they knew about to get on Denby's left and right very quickly. To understand why this next part happens, we need to briefly talk about Lieutenant Herrick. I don't think I would have liked Lieutenant Herrick being in charge of me, although my opinion on him has been changing back and forth over the last several days. So he was a 24-year-old aggressive lieutenant. Herrick had some of the best NCOs Hal had to offer, like Sergeant First Class Carl Palmer. Hal didn't give Herrick a promotion to recon platoon leader, which was a coveted position, because Sergeant Major Plumley, which is Hal's like main sergeant, he told him, "Colonel, if you put Lieutenant Herrick in there, he will get them all killed." And after a drowning incident during a patrol, Palmer told Hal Herrick would get them all killed with his aggressiveness. A little after 1 p.m., Herrick comes up on Denby's right side like he's supposed to and starts to take fire. He reported to Captain Heron, who's in charge of all their company, that there was a contact to his right and that he was in pursuit of a squad attempting to flee. For those of you trying to remember numbers, squads is just a couple guys. So it's like 4 guys or whatever, four to 8. Herrick kept chasing the North Vietnamese until he was well over 300 feet away from Denby. What he found was a platoon of North Vietnamese coming down on him hard. To Herrick's credit, he made a great call. The great military theorist Clausewitz explained that a flank needs to be done early in an engagement. Herrick's 2 lead squads were engaged with the enemy when he radioed Savage, who is his sergeant, to go flank the right side really quickly. It took the enemy by surprise, and many turned in fear. It was also fortunate because the North Vietnamese tried to set up a machine gun on that side during that exact flanking charge. The bad news for Herrick was that there were now enemies on his left between him and the rest of Bravo Company. Herrick's platoon was now completely isolated in the worst way. Now, this is obviously very bad for Herrick's platoon, but there was an unexpected good thing for how that happens here. We need to remember 2 things that we have covered so far. 1, Hal wanted to make contact with the enemy as far away from the landing zone to protect his fragile supply line. And 2, Hal wanted to try a new tactic that didn't use a 360-degree perimeter. Colonel Ann didn't completely flank Howe over the next several days because Herrick made Colonel Ann think that there were more soldiers forming a battle line than there really were.
So where are they in relation to this creek bed right now?
Yeah, so the creek bed is, let's get our bearings here. So the creek bed is pretty much like west, maybe a little bit northwest, but it's mainly west. And they are going more north-northwest. That's where Heron's second company is.
This dude got so deep that he's completely surrounded by everyone, and so the Chupung Mountains are like north of him.
So he runs like completely northwest of Bravo Company. And he like because they were radioing while they were doing it. He runs like across dry creek beds. He runs over streams. He runs through bushes, and he's like explaining where he's going, but he has no idea where he is. And he's so hot that towards the end of it, he's like, "I'm worried I'm going to lose contact with Denby, the other platoon he's supposed to be tied in with."
Like radio contact?
No, like that he's gonna lose the actual like ability to see him. And they're like, Howell was writing, and he's like, this dude is so gone already. Like, he didn't even realize how far he had moved his whole platoon.
But you were making it sound like as though this is kind of his personality.
This is his personality.
Okay.
So he was passed over for a very big promotion, and he was the name that Hal put on the list.
Yeah, it's interesting. You and I are in our 30s now, and now I'm sitting here reading about a 24-year-old in charge of all these men in Vietnam. And I can say with pretty sincere confidence that I as a 24-year-old would not have been able to lead these men.
No.
As a 24 Spencer, like, hell no.
And he's leading some of the best sergeants that Hal has, because those sergeants were like picked to train this guy. Like, this guy is smart. He's good.
Is he? And so I'm wondering, like, what is his background? Did he also do like a West Point scenario, or
I don't know if he went to West Point, but I know like his dad was an astronomy professor at like UCLA or something. So like he clearly comes from like an educated background, and he's very hot. But like that flank move ended up being like the total right call in the moment. His head is like, even though he's tunnel visioned, he does make some great calls, and he will make another great call that will like save a couple dudes.
I'm where my mind goes with this is, I watch a lot of sports, and there is something to be said about, because the whole idea here is, and we've been talking about, the theme seems to be today that they want to kind of hit first and they want to hit strong.
Right.
And there's like a momentum thing to be said about this.
And Cloudswoods, from what I've been reading, if you're going to do a positional thing, you better do it early, because it matters less the longer the battle goes on.
Right. And so this is what I'm saying with the whole sports thing is, like, if you watch soccer or football or baseball, I'm sure there's a statistic out there about whomever scores first is more likely to win.
That's interesting.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, whoever builds that momentum.
They even call it like first blood.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So that's where my mind goes with it, is that they want to hit hard early as much as possible to, one, get momentum, and two, just kind of degrade their morale on the other side of like, oh shit, this is happening fast and a lot all at once. So that's where my mind is.
Yeah. And I really didn't like him the first time I read through his stuff.
Herrick,
because I was like, you asshole, like, you're in charge of people's lives, like, you're the leader. But because like there was some comments where he had told people right before this battle, like, that he plans on getting a Medal of Honor. So, like, he has an ego. Like, it is there. But that's not always the worst thing for a leader. And it's just a really interesting, complicated scenario. Like,
so that's interesting that you say that, because I am going to reference sports here again.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where perhaps, like, if this person, this Herrick, if we were reading about him on the enemy standpoint, you'd be like, this dude's so fucking annoying.
Right.
But it might be someone that you might want to like have on your team.
Right.
Like,
it would suck to go up against that guy.
Exactly.
Like, he's going to chase us the whole way.
For instance, there's a very polarizing character on like the Golden State Warriors, the basketball team, and his name is Draymond Green. And he's very emotional, very hot-headed, but like since he's on my team, like I love watching him
Right.
get like emotional and make all these scenes and almost get kicked out of games and but if he were on the other team, I'd be like, this motherfucker is annoying.
Right.
So that's interesting to see how that plays into like how it would affect momentum in like the first blood thing.
Michael Jordan also played basketball. Those are more sports facts.
Dude,
for
check
you
this
guys.
out. Michael Jordan also played baseball.
He did. 9/11 ruined his chances. Was that a thing?
Don't think that was a thing.
No.
No, this is pre 9/11.
What was it? It was something weird though. I watched a documentary. I learned a little bit about
Michael
sports.
Jordan's also an actor.
Wow.
Space Jam.
Space Jam is a lovely movie. That's
yeah.
why I could name him when I was thinking. I was like, I got to give a little sports fact here.
You did great.
Oh, I do know another one because I read books on data. If you know, is it 6 people or 7 people? Maybe 6. I think it's 6.
What are you talking about?
If you know 6 people that are like over 7 feet tall, one of them currently plays in the NBA.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's more fun than your Michael Jordan fact.
That is more fun.
Yeah. The irony here, folks, is that Kevin did high school sports and I did not. So
That's true.
Just food for thought.
So Hal's fear of being engaged with the enemy before he could get all of his men on the field had been realized. The next set of Hueys came in at 1:30 with the last of Alpha Company and some Charlie Company, and Hal switched up his plan based on what he simply called instincts. He sent Alpha Company to tie into Heron's Bravo Company's left side. He sent Edwards' Charlie Company to the southwest. Let's review what the battlefield looks like at this moment. Bravo Company was to the northwest of the landing zone. Far off on the right, northwest of the landing zone, the isolated Herrick's platoon was trapped. To their immediate left was Alpha Company. Alpha Company's left flank, or south and southwest of the landing zone, Charlie's company was taking position. Okay. At this time, between 1:30 and 2, the entire line... Yeah. Spencer, show me a little map here.
I have a little graphic showing where the Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie Company are.
At this time, between 1:30 and 2, the entire air cavalry seemed to be in contact with the enemy. The North Vietnamese were good shots, and they knew how to quickly find leaders, radio operators, and medics. That came from Hal. If this sounds heartless, it might help to remember some ideas again from Clausewitz. The North Vietnamese are in a complete war. Like on their side, they are in a complete war. Their only option is to fight as hard as they can to destroy their enemy completely or to make it cost too much for their enemy to continue the war. That's it. I personally take issue with targeting medics, but I have never had the misfortune of fighting an ideological war against a nation with vastly greater resources than mine. So, quick pause on that. How do you feel about them shooting medics?
Not good.
Not good.
Anti.
Yeah. Bad.
I was just looking up on the internet because you said that you were talking about Clausewitz and complete war. Is that what you referred it to?
Yeah, I don't know if that's exact terminology, but he essentially says early on in this book, like, if you're going to war, like, there is nothing off the table because you are here to destroy your enemy.
Yeah, and then in my mind, I was like, isn't there a total war? That's like an actual term, total war?
Yeah, and it may come from him on that.
Yeah, and so I looked it up, and it says, like, total war is a type of warfare that includes any and all civilian-associated resources and infrastructure as legitimate military targets. That seems like that was for Vietnam, what it was total war.
For them, it was total war, you know?
Yeah.
And I was thinking, it kind of reminds me of, like, the Revolutionary War in America. Like, we did some not okay things in terms of following etiquettes. We started doing guerrilla war so that we could make it cost more and started hitting supply lines and started doing whatever we could do.
Yeah. Killing medics.
It's just rough. But also the medics pull guns a lot in this.
So this was like a specific, they knew, because like, how were they identified, the medics?
I assume that the medics had the cross
like a red cross on there.
Yeah.
That seems so dumb.
Yeah,
Like,
that's exactly what I was thinking too. Like, but maybe it's for like your own squad so that you can like find the medic faster. But I don't know. I feel like you could just call the word medic and they come over.
That seems ill-advised.
Yeah.
It's literally a target.
If you're a
It's the
medic or
shape
know
of
more
a
about how
target.
the medic systems work, please shoot us an email.
Yeah, why are you wearing like a red target symbol on your helmet?
Yeah.
Because I remember seeing in like World War II movies, like Saving Private
Right.
Ryan, you see the medic helmets,
Sure.
and I know it's a thing, but now hearing this story, I'm just like, y'all didn't figure that out, that some people would see like a fat red target on their helmet and be like, we should go for those guys.
Yeah, because
So
even if they don't know what it is, these guys are really good. Like, that helmet looks different. Like,
it's the same thing of how we got rid of officers aren't allowed to wear shiny brass in the field.
that makes sense because these guys are shooting anybody. They talked about it. Some of I think it was like a private first class. It was like they're real good at finding the two bars, right, for the second
See?
lieutenants,
See?
and they take them out.
Man, that's like, so for instance, that was like in in Iraq specifically, they were giving interpreters different uniforms, and the interpreters were like, "Fuck that! They're gonna go
Yeah.
right. I'm gonna be a target if I'm wearing a different uniform. They're gonna think I'm more special or whatever."
Yeah.
You're telling me an interpreter in a foreign country figured that out, but we couldn't figure out that a helmet with a red stripe on it was like a bad idea?
Or we learned it from this.
That's fair. Fair. According to the whole Pentagon Papers thing, we knew a lot about how this was a bad idea, but continued to do it anyway.
Yeah, we'll go over that at the end of the book.
Does it go into that?
Yeah, Hal is very critical of
Oh,
this.
good. See, because I was wondering.
So this battle is essentially an experiment for both sides. And for that reason, I keep going back and forth. Like I was telling Hannah today, like I'm like rereading stuff and I'm like, it's what these people wanted, I guess. Like, both sides seem to want to like see how strong they are. And then like you read about like they had a kid and stuff. I'm like, what are you doing out here? But
Dude, did Hal Moore not straight up say that this battle is what made Ho Chi Minh realize that he could win the war?
Yeah.
Something like that?
well, he learned this was an experiment for both sides, and we'll talk about it on part 3, but he learned what the cost is to fight American troops, and the cost is justified to him and his men.
So this is essentially just a little petri dish of like figuring out
About how it's all going to work. How many of my soldiers that are outclassed because we don't have artillery does it take to take out American troops?
Okay, so as of right now, with all these medics do we have any ratios as far as medics?
I
Being-
don't have the ratio.
But it's not. It's enough to be a
It's an issue.
okay, and that's gonna have a huge effect on the medevacs, obviously.
Yeah, the medevacs are, but I don't think the medevacs know at this point, but they're still going to.
Right? No, of
come
course
in.
not.
Yeah.
But obviously, not having medics is going to increase the amount that are going to need to get flown out like ASAP.
Yeah. And a lot of the medics, pretty much all the stories of the medics are like, they're just the most saintly people I could think of because they essentially, whenever I was reading through any like the personal accounts, they would just use their body to cover over
Oh
the
my
person
God.
while they tried to fix them. So even if they didn't get shot running to them, they usually got shot because that guy got shot because he was exposed or he had moved or something. And so this medic is using his body to
Oh my
shield
God.
him and usually gets shot that way. And so these medics are like,
Superheroes.
they seriously are like,
Yeah.
I don't understand. And we'll talk about it with Herrick's medic, but doesn't go well. I don't know if I'd have him by name because his story is like this isn't much of an entertainment podcast when I go through the medic story. Like Jesus Christ.
If you are a medic out there listening to this and you were in any war, like I would love to have a medic on this.
Yeah, that'd be
show to-
great. That'd be
yeah.
a great person to have a conversation with. Here is how close it really got for Hal's 7th Cavalry. Let's talk about how close it got for it all being over before it even began. Because it was crazy.
Yay!
Colonel Ann said that the first attacks were from his 9th Battalion and the 33rd Regiment to learn Hal's position. The overall strategy was to find a way to encircle the 7th Cavalry to not allow the helicopters to exit. So Hal is correct. That is what they're trying to do. Both these men clearly are on like equal footing in terms of who they are as commanders. The 7th Battalion, led by Major Hua, found a possible entrance to LZ X-ray on the southern side of the perimeter. Charlie Company, led by Edwards, got into position no more than 5 minutes before Hoa's troops began their assault. Edwards radioed, "We are in heavy contact, estimate 175 to 200 enemy. Damn, these guys are good." So we'll go back to Herrick in a second, but for the start of a battle, and we're trying to like deep dive into this, we're only like a half an hour into this, and they almost get run over immediately. Like 200 men walking through this creek bed. And again, Hal only put Charlie Company right here, or Nadel, he only put them there based on what he said was his instinct. He was just like looking around. He's like, I feel like I'm going to get fucked by that.
I mean, I'm wondering where, based on like the intel briefs that they got prior to doing this, how long were they expecting this to last? Do they know?
No, they
They
didn't
never
know.
fucking know.
They never knew how long.
Yeah.
Because they kept switching up where they were even going to land until like the day before.
Great.
And right before, we didn't even cover all that because it's kind of boring to talk about. But like there was 3 potential ones, and they had like done these recon missions, but they can't do too much recon because then the enemy knows that they're trying to
Right.
recon where they're going to fly.
Right.
And so like they did a really quick one. They're like, that one.
Well, we talked about it in the previous episode, but it's a solid spot.
Yeah.
It's like a really clear landing.
Yes.
It looks like it was just made for
Right?
what takes place here. Yeah.
Yeah. So they had 5 minutes, and they would have probably got just steamrolled.
Wow.
And the story was, luckily, like, Edwards, so it was Edwards, not Nadal. So Edwards was the one, yeah, it's Charlie Company. And I was reading through his account of those like 5 minutes, and he was literally like picking up soldiers that were eating their sea rations because they had just landed, and they're like, I don't know when I'm going to get to eat again. So they were all popping their sea rations when they're eating.
damn.
And he's like picking them up like, you gotta go, because they just had the feeling that it was coming. And they barely got a line formed of like 100 men. It was rough.
Holy shit, dude.
It's crazy. All right, but let's go back to Herrick for a minute. So getting back to Herrick's isolated platoon, Heron had a plan. 3 platoons commanded by Deal, Devney, and Marm launched an attack from Bravo Company's position towards Herrick. So to give us a little bit of navigation, they are going to be heading north-northwest at this point to try to get to Lieutenant Herrick. All right.
And they officially know that he's surrounded and absolutely in
They know he's fucked.
distress right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
The radio contact is still there. Like Herrick has some good radio operators.
Okay.
They approximated the location in between firefights with the North Vietnamese by having a radio man from Herrick's platoon fire around when they said fire, and then like counting the seconds, and then like guessing where they think they were, and then they kept following those sounds. So they're doing like echolocation in the middle of a firefight. It's crazy. They get within 100 yards of Herrick, which is crazy to me that they were able to do that because they were all in this middle of a fight. Unfortunately, the North Vietnamese were ready though, and they were doing things like literally tying themselves with ropes into trees, and they were using that to pin them down. These 3 platoons that were trying to rescue them. The tactic that the Americans tried was called fire and movement, an online attack. But Sergeant Gilruth reported that the North Vietnamese were waiting for us each time. So can you explain before I go on about like fire and movement or online attack?
I mean, yeah. So, well, what I want to explain with fire and movement is like, have you ever played that Tom Clancy game, The Division?
No.
It's an entire game. The entire game is based on like fire and movement, where it's all based on like cover, fire, move to a different cover.
Okay.
Fire, move to a different cover. That's what I view as like fire and movement is. You're not sitting around like holding up camping, as they in the Call of Duty business would say. I'm gonna look it up and make sure I'm not fucking all this up, so that there's some dude like who in 03.
So that would be different from laying down a base of fire, because a base of fire would be just like get fire going and don't stop.
It's like, so some people call it fire and movement, and I've heard it more as like a fire and maneuver.
Okay.
It's so right here it's talking about a military tactic. It uses suppressive fire to decrease the enemy's ability to return fire. It's organization, unit cohesion, and morale. The tactic is used by small unit commanders of the modern battlefield. So yeah, it's the whole we as kids watching action movies, and he's like, cover me.
Yeah.
And like the dude goes and runs out and he's covering fire. and then that dude waits for suppressive fire,
Right.
and then moves. So it's a constant, just suppressive fire, somebody moves, more suppressive fire, someone moves. Kind of like what is that fucking kids game called? Leapfrog,
Leapfrog.
where
Yeah.
you like hop over someone.
Yep.
That.
So okay, that's kind of what I was thinking, and that makes both sides look really like equal in my mind. That's a pretty good tactic. Right? It's obviously a good tactic. We still use it. It
Yeah.
sounds like,
Yeah.
and it's very effective. And we have these M16s, which are doing great things for our American troops right now because they're like not getting jammed and they're just doing awesome work. And the North Vietnamese are also just putting it back to them. Like they are not able to do it. And so they have to be both pretty competent at this moment. Like, damn, like if that's unsuccessful, I don't even know what that looks like. That means like the guy in front of you gets shot and you're like, I guess we can't keep firing and moving. Like we have to stop now.
Yeah, I think both sides are just kind of waiting to figure out when they're going to catch. It's essentially when you have two teams that are of equal, power, you're waiting for the other person to make a mistake.
Right.
That's really what it comes down to.
All right, so let's see what's happening about 100 yards away, 100 feet away. So around 2:30, things were just as bad for Herrick's platoon. They got outflanked on their right and now had the North Vietnamese coming in behind them. It sounded like a nightmare, with gunners having to fire past their own squad to hit the North Vietnamese. So like their big gunners, their M60s, were literally turning their guns over and shooting past their own squads.
Yeah, they might have skipped that day in training.
Yeah. Like, holy shit. The sergeant was like, we all thought we were going to get hit by our own M60. Like, what the hell? And like, these guys were good. Like, one of the M60 gunners is reported as like the best in the regiment or whatever. And so he's like the guy and he does so much to keep these guys alive. But they're doing shit like that right now. So it's desperate.
Do we know if they ended up doing any friendly fire, killing someone of their own on accident?
Friendly fire, I don't know how much of it happens here. I don't think really. None that's really
Dude, that's
reported.
awesome. That's awesome.
But there is going to be a lot of friendly fire in the fiasco.
From the bombing, right? From the carpet bombing. Or it's not a carpet bombing, but it's like the
bombing thing that
broken
we'll go over.
arrow stuff. That's what he calls it in the movie. Is that it?
Broken arrow is when you are... A broken arrow in this time is when you are afraid that you are about to be overrun.
And that's when you call for... So I thought broken arrow was when you... We went over
Broken
this
Arrow,
last time.
the movie, is when you steal a nuclear bomb as John Travolta.
What was the term that we talked about last time where people from anybody that's near in the air to bring all the bombs close? Didn't we talk about that?
It's probably from the Broken Arrow because the Broken Arrow is like everything's gone to shit. Give it what you can.
Hail Mary, essentially?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. They had to move and run, taking casualties until all three rifle squads were able to group together. 90 feet below them, the two machine gun groups were stuck. The North Vietnamese started to attack from the north, the southwest, and there were 50 to 70 North Vietnamese that were right at the M60 gunners from the east. So essentially what's happened is that there's like this little knoll, this little hill, where the three rifle squads were able to get to. And then down at like the bottom of the hill, like, I don't know, 90 feet, there's the two gunners that are like stuck there. They weren't able to get all the way up the hill. So they have like no cover. And they're getting attacked on three sides with 70 of these North Vietnamese coming straight at just those two guns.
Jesus.
Okay. And then
were they not able to get up that hill because they just didn't have enough people carrying all that gear?
They were covering. These gunners are like fucking saints.
Fire.
Like they were.
Okay.
They didn't ask for help.
They were. We're busy.
Yeah, it was crazy. So let's talk about what happens to them. All right, so that's their attack. Sergeant Hurdle's gun, he's one of the M60 guns, he covered the other gunner's retreat. So the lowest one, that sergeant, who is like a great guy, it sounded like, his group is like, well, fuck it, we'll just cover you. And so they cover them, and then they get overrun. but the gun was still firing even after the enemy moved past it. Sergeant Savage, who is in the rifle group, said he could still hear Hurdle screaming, "Motherfucker, son of a bitch," over all the gunfires until some grenades went off, killing the 3 men that were on the M60.
Damn.
Then the North Vietnamese take that M60 and turn it around and start firing at the Americans up the grassy knoll.
Shit.
So
So-
now they're getting closed in on all sides, right? Because it's a 3-pronged attack. That's why it was so effective. Lest you think Herrick was a complete Halsey, he did organize a defense before getting hit, and this is why
Complete Halsey.
This is why I keep going back and forth on Herrick, because he does do stuff that's like, you believed it, man. You believed in your duty. So he organized a defense before getting hit. He then by organizing, like, he walked to like each soldier in his rifle platoon and like made sure, like, you got ammo, like this is what you're going to be doing, like you got to lay down right now, man. Like, he got them going, and he was able to set them up for the 3 prongs that they know they were getting attacked by. He then radios Heron, the leader of Bravo Company, and tells him that Sergeant Palmer was now in charge of the platoon because he gets hit. He gave orders to destroy signal codes, redistribute ammo. He called for artillery and to look for a way to run away. Heron reported, "I give Herrick all the credit in the world for pulling that platoon together so that they could make their stand. Herrick's last words were, 'If I have to die, I'm glad to give my life for my country.'"
Whoa, those were his last words?
Those were his last words. I think he said them to Savage, his sergeant.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
That gave me chills.
Yeah. He like believed it. And that's right. I don't know how life is complicated. People are complicated.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. So there's flaws there, obviously. There's some character defects going on, but like,
He didn't just,
damn.
I was thinking like, if this was Halsey, he would have been bitching the whole time. Like, he would have,
Halsey wouldn't have been there.
I used a curse word. Like, you know, like,
Halsey wouldn't have been there.
it's not that. He was like, I fucked up. Or not even worrying about that. Like, we're in a bad spot. I got to get my men together because that's my job right now. And he got them together.
So it wasn't him, but doesn't somebody get a Medal of Honor in this battle?
I think
There
there's a
is.
couple. Yeah,
There's someone. I don't know who it is, but we're gonna get to it at some point.
I'm sure I have it highlighted.
It's around.
Yeah.
It's there.
So, unfortunately, Palmer dies shortly after Herrick did. And Palmer's story, so like, there was like a single volley that comes in and just like tears up the leadership. So like it hits Herrick, and that's what he dies from. And it also like knocks Palmer out.
Just
And
the blast.
like I think it like hit his helmet or something.
Oh,
It like
he was, like,
literally
lit-
knocked him out. And this like I think there's a private first class who was like, I thought he was dead. And then he gets up and he bandages the wrong side of his head because he has a head trauma. And so he fixes the private like helps him get the right one. It was either a private or a radio operator like helping him. And then he gets exploded by a grenade.
Oh my god, dude.
So like it's rough right now. The men are all forced to lay down. They all stick their ammo in front of them. So like the way it was described is they each like throw all their ammo to each other so they all have extra ammo, and they just stack it in front of them. And so that way they could shoot laying down, throw away
So
their
it's just
old
a pool like of ammo.
Well, yeah, like they each would have like a stack of like 15 magazines right in front of them next to their guns. And so they would lay down, throw their magazine, and then grab the next one from the top of their stack and put it in because they knew they weren't allowed to move.
Whoa.
And they were just going to stay there. And they were going to stay there for a long ass time.
How long do they stay there?
All night.
Oh my god. Yay.
Yeah. Spoiler. All right. And they had to fight off the waves of enemies from the 3 different directions. Sergeant Stokes was also killed during this fight. That left Sergeant Savage to direct artillery based on his instincts.
His name is Sergeant Savage.
Yeah, and he is a fucking savage. So let me read through this and I'll explain what he's doing. He had to direct artillery based on his instincts as it was falling to protect the dozen or so fighters that they had left. That sounds impossible, and the description of how it happened makes it sound like everyone else thought it was also impossible. So what was happening is they're all laying down shooting. Sergeant Savage is also laying down, and he has the radio. The guy with the radio died, and he was able to like get his hand under the guy and find the receiver, and is holding the receiver next to his ear. And as he hears artillery go off, he's like, a little bit to the right, and like is
What?
directing it that way because they can't get precise location.
Holy shit.
And so he's directing it based on like what he feels like. I feel like if you shoot it more north, you'll get some people that we need to get. And then they shoot a little more north, and he's like, okay, a little bit south of that. And they're doing it by approximating. This guy's like, I think 50 yards to the west is good. And
That is savage.
that is the most savage thing I've
That
heard.
is
Like,
savage as fuck. Yeah. Wow. Wow. Is that this artillery that he's directing? This is not at night. This is during the day.
this is during the day. This is
Yeah.
like 2 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
I don't think it's 3 yet. Yeah, so at the same time, around 2:30, the 5th landing was commencing with the 1st of Delta Company. That's the 4th company.
Yeah. Delta.
The North Vietnamese commander, who was only about a mile or so away from this action, was ready this time. So the pilot, Bruce Crandall, reported, as I was flaring out to touch down, we started receiving heavy ground fire. I touched down at the forward part of the LZ, looked out to my left and saw a North Vietnamese firing at my ship from a point just outside the length of my rotor blades. Crandall stayed long to pick up some wounded. He adds, when we landed, we saw that every bullet had struck the wounded in the head or the neck. Excellent marksmanship by the other side, and not a happy thought for a helicopter pilot, to say the least. A natural question to ask at this time, or at least my natural question, is, if both sides were really so equal and trained soldiers, how can the 7th Cavalry put up any kind of a fight against so many North Vietnamese? Because again, this is like 1,700 North Vietnamese against like 300 Americans, and there's only like, I think there's less than 200 Americans down right now because they've only done barely 5 landings. Hal addresses this by saying, a major difference between Lieutenant Colonel Nguyen Hu An of the People's Army of Vietnam and Lieutenant Colonel Hal Moore of the 1st Cavalry Division was that I had major fire support and he didn't. And Hal's artillery folk loved artillery. They loved it. When they were training back in the States, he was presented with an 1860s picture of this ridiculous painting of a cleanly dressed officer firing a cannon at a bunch of dudes killing each other. And it says, artillery lends dignity to what would otherwise be a vulgar brawl.
Okay.
Have you seen this picture before?
No, dude.
Check it out. It's ridiculous. Let me make it a little bigger for you, huh?
What?
Yeah, this was what they gave him in the States. They're like, we're here for you, man.
Okay. It looks like a fucking political cartoon from the New Yorker.
Yes, 1860s.
Wow.
We'll put it on our Instagram. It's fucking hilarious.
It is hilarious.
So, just so you guys all know, the artillery people loved what they were doing. They actually, I feel bad for artillery folk because it's something I didn't cover, but, you know, they would run out of their artillery, like for the ones that were the mobile ones that were going with the platoons. Yeah. And so they ran out for a while of being able to cover for Herrick's platoon, and like they are devastated. Like reading the reports, like they are just so heartbroken that they can't provide this cover anymore.
You got one job to do, bro.
They have one job,
yeah.
And they know that this is the equalizer. They know that this is why they stand a chance, is this artillery. Not saying that the soldiers with the M16s are bad, but they're just as good as the Vietnamese soldiers with their AKs and whatever they have. It's just that we have tube artillery and we have, you know, phosphorus bombs. And
you were saying Hal said that the one thing that we had that they didn't was air support.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that includes like an entire air force.
Yeah.
They didn't have any planes, right? The Vietnamese?
No, not that I know of.
Yeah.
Well, no, he said fire support.
Oh, fire support.
Yeah.
So also air support.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm going to talk about too right now.
Okay.
So, hey, we're on the same page here. That was my first thought too. I was like, Hal, you're kind of underselling all the support you have, which I get because you're the commander. So, like, you're like, that's all we had that was different. Like, no, bullshit. There was something else that Hal had that Ann did not, and that was Bruce Crandall and the other pilots. So, besides just having helicopters, it matters.
Just helicopters.
It matters who your pilots are because Bruce Crandall is a fucking hero.
Fair point.
So Bruce Crandall said, remembering his first flight in the LZ X-ray, we knew the officers and men on the ground were the best in their business. Now it was our time to prove that we were their equals in the air, which is a badass thing to say.
Yeah.
At one point, Crandall and his buddy Ed Freeman, a battlefield commissioned officer from the Korean War who stood 4 inches taller than the maximum allowed height for pilots with the nickname Too Tall to Fly.
Too tall.
Too tall. So he was battlefield commissioned. That's how he got around the height.
That's dope.
Yeah, he was in Korea, and they loved him, and they gave him a commission. So him and Crandall are like best buds. Like they always fight over who's like the second best pilot over.
So
Like they
this
always
is
funny
like
jokes.
when, what is the dwarf in Lord of the Rings?
Yeah, this is Gimli and Legolas stuff for sure.
Yeah,
like,
they're like talking shit while killing
Yes.
folks and like counting each kill.
yes.
Love it.
This is buddy cop for sure. And like
Okay.
they just, oh, you're going in there? Cool. I'll go in there too, man.
Yeah.
Fuck you. I'll go in there.
That's
Like,
fun.
Yeah, it is.
They should
They're
make a
terrified,
movie
but-
about them. A fictional
Seriously.
movie about them.
Because they flew all over the world together.
Did they?
Yeah. They flew in the Arctic together. They flew in South America together. Africa,
I
Middle East.
just want to like skip ahead and ask you if they both survive.
We'll talk about stuff like that later.
Okay.
So remember I said on that 5th time in, they started receiving like heavy fire.
Mhm.
So then all of a sudden it's too hot to fly in the rest of them. And they're like, this is Hal's nightmare. Like I can't get all my troops on the ground. Like, fuck, what am I supposed to do?
And then you're also stuck there.
And you're stuck there.
Yeah.
And Crandall makes this decision. He's just like, all right, I don't think they need more men right now. I don't think that's the right move. I think they just need a shit ton of ammo. Like, again, what do they have? Fire support. Like, I got to give them what they have. That's good. So while his helicopter's getting fueled, him and Too Tall had them already rig up these 2 other helicopters just loaded with ammo. And they just hop in those while the other ones are getting refueled. So he's like, that one will be waiting for me for when I come back to do my normal job. But I have a side job, my side gig, my side hustle.
mission.
Yeah. Like,
Side mission. So then how do they drop off the ammo?
So let's talk about that. When it was too hot to deliver ammo and collect wounded, Crandall took control of the flight plans from Matt Dillon. Remember, Matt Dillon's flying around in the helicopter right now, and he's been controlling all the flight plans.
This
so
is
far.
reconnaissance, Matt Dillon?
Yeah, this is the guy who's actually making everything a reality.
Bird's eye view?
Yep.
Yeah.
So the fact that Crandall could even do that, to me, was like, he has so much cred. Like,
It's badass.
because Matt Dillon probably doesn't have to give an inch to anybody. Because Hal's like, Matt Dillon can do whatever the fuck he wants because he's the one that makes me work.
Right.
And he took control from Matt Dillon. So what he essentially did is no one gets in but me, and then maybe some other people a little bit later. The 2 pilots go into the LZ while loading. They get down into the LZ while loading the wounded. Captain Metzger, who I just wanted to bring up because this dude was like waiting there. He's loading all the wounded in. He knows it's super hot, and he gets shot and killed. And he gets shot and killed from the east. And that's really bad because the east was the unprotected spot. So Crandall's rotor blades also hits treetops on his way out, almost causing him to crash.
What?
Yeah.
Jesus, dude.
Because he put so many
Yeah.
wounded on there. Like he can't get out, and he has to get out so fast.
Damn, and I'm just imagining that these bodies are just precariously piled on top of each other.
Yeah.
Oh my God, dude.
So he got back and then switched back into his other Huey that was being refueled. And this other guy, Winkle, I think he was like a warrant officer. Is that a thing?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think he was a warrant officer. He did something similar, and it illustrates how crazy it was to land at the LZ X-ray when it was hot. So we came burning into the AIE. I'm not sure what that is. I said, now left, hit 80 knots, clip the treetops. Lee's turn was precise. Lee was his pilot. Then came the pop, 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 and the right side us the bright flashes of passing green tracers. Now right, Lee, right. Watch for the marker panel. I saw it directly in front and below. There it is. After he took some wounded, Lee had to do a translational lift where the helicopter gains maximum speed before attempting to gain any altitude. And on his way out, the other helicopter that was with him got hit, had to go down. Lee had to land, take the crew and the wounded off the other helicopter, put it on, and do the same translational lift again. It's crazy. So their directions, I was trying to illustrate like how crazy the directions were. Like the directions were like go at 80 knots until you start getting shot at, and then bank hard ass to the left until you see something on the corner of your eye, and then bank hard right, and then just land it.
It's all while they're getting shot at.
While they're getting shot at. And that's your road sign. Like that's your navigational piece.
right.
Like when you start getting shot at, you're good to turn left.
You're reading the hey, and if you see the red tracers,
Yeah.
you've gone too far.
I just can't imagine because this guy hadn't been there before, and so like that was his actual directions that they had told him right before, and he followed those directions. Like we're getting shot at, turn left.
Yeah, when you come to my neighborhood, you know, when you start to get shot at, that's when you take a right, and I'm the third house from the
Yeah.
right.
Oh
Gee
Jesus.
whiz.
So all that's pretty crazy, right?
Yes.
And there was a helicopter. The helicopter got shot down.
I was gonna say if they're getting shot at this entire time, how is this not affecting the helicopters
So
themselves?
that one helicopter did go. He was able to land it, and then they explained the after action report that the hydraulics were hit. So if he would have been flying for more than 5 minutes, it would have just crashed, and they would have all died.
So it was. Oh my.
So they all made the right call. So again, these pilots are making really important calls, and they're just being crazy and like, I don't know. Let's recollect where we are. It is now early afternoon on November 14th. LZ X-ray is hot right now where Hal commands from. Remember, I just said the East was suddenly getting shot at. Hal has nothing on the East to protect him. Like they were getting shot at in ways that they were not prepared for. To the southwest, Edwards Charlie Company is in a very tactical fight. Heron's Bravo Company is to the northwest of the LZ, engaged with the enemy. There is North Vietnamese between Bravo Company and Herrick's Lost Platoon, which
Great.
is to the northwest of Heron. Nadel's Alpha Company, covering the left side of Heron and west of the LZ, is in a fight for the creek bed. Hal states that a commander in battle has 3 means of influencing the action: fire support, now pouring down in torrents, his personal presence on the battlefield, and the use of his reserve. Unfortunately for Hal, his reserve force is him, Sergeant Major Plumley, and radio operator Bob Oletti.
That's it.
And that's where we'll pick up for part 3. I wanted to add in this. There's some tactical shit that happens, but it will take so long to get through it. We have to do it at part 3.
Why is my memory telling me from the first episode that like Delta Company was the reserve?
So Delta Company's supposed to be the reserve.
Okay.
But as the first of Delta Company started coming in on the 5th flight, but on the 5th flight, it started getting really hot.
And they were just like, stay here. They
Well,
just had them stay there?
They couldn't bring them in. So they only brought in a couple of them. So like they're just essentially filling out for the casualties they already have. And lest you think that Hal is being like dramatic or like isn't taking this seriously, he goes and loads up ammo right now because he's like, I am the reserve and I take that seriously. So he goes and like finds a gun off a wounded guy and like grabs an M16 and like grabs a bunch of ammo and fills all of his ammo pouches. He's like, all right. And he like decides like, I'm going to go to Nadel if they need reinforcements. Like,
So like 4 dudes are the reserve.
Yeah. 3.
3. Gee whiz. What a crazy story, dude.
This is wild.
What a crazy story. The craziest story of like part of all of this is that dudes made it out to tell the story.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And he had talked to, so one thing that I didn't write in here, I don't think we'll talk about it next part. I don't think I put in the notes for the next part. So we'll just talk about it now. But he talked to Colonel Ann, right, in like 1991. And they were talking and he's like, dude, why didn't you just finish surrounding us on that east side? Because they don't.
Because that was the one where they were not protecting, you were saying? Yeah.
And I said at the beginning of this episode, but Colonel Ann thought that Herrick was part of like this large force, this large line. So like he couldn't figure out that he could get all the way around him. He thought like, man, this line goes on forever. And he was like stunned. But then he says like this badass quote of like, no commander knows everything on a battlefield.
Yeah.
Like, and that's true.
That is true. And that's it's especially true when you don't have a helicopter just flying up telling you everything that what it looks like from above.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
Hal didn't mention that either on his, what's the difference between him and Colonel Ann?
Well, because then he would be like, how the fuck did you not win?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand the Americans didn't win.
Yeah, so, and listeners, next, I think part 3, we're not going to do as much of a deep dive. I think the deep dive was interesting right now. Like, I found this battle fascinating, like the turns and twists.
I love it.
Because you could do this, and you could do 6 parts.
Yeah, how many parts are we planning on doing?
I want to wrap up the whole battle in the next part.
Okay.
It might be a little bit longer. I want to go more broad and just like some anecdotes.
That's fine.
That I think are interesting.
Because it lasts 5 days?
Well, that's what we'll talk about. So I want to do like a part 4, like a mini part 1, like part 4. It's going to be like a smaller part where we talk about the fuck up battle that happens after this battle.
Oh, okay. Is that Not including Albany or X-ray. This is like a separate from that, or
This is Albany.
okay. And the battle is post all of that.
It's post X-ray. So like Hal getting off the battlefield,
Yeah.
then everything gets fucked.
Okay.
And I want to talk about that. It's like it's terrible. And just so you can see that Hal in the commanding structure of this like does matter significantly for how we get through this as Americans.
It sounds like there was a lot of really well-trained individuals doing all this.
Yeah.
Smart, well-trained, brave dudes on both sides.
On both sides.
Yeah.
Dude, getting tied up in a tree, like
Yeah,
your
when
buddy
you
ropes
told
you
me
into a
that, I was
tree.
like-
And they only, so the Americans didn't know they were roped in until the, like, I think a sergeant, like one of the hard sergeants that had fought in Korea or something, like realized, he's like, I think there's a fucker in that tree. And so he shoots the tree and just a gun falls. And they're like, oh, why did only a gun fall? And they like found him and they're like, they're roping themselves against the trees. Like, this is crazy.
Is this the Goonies? Like,
Right,
what
like-
is happening? That's crazy. But anyway, thank you to our listeners. We appreciate you guys. Again, feel free to email us if you have any ideas or just want to talk. We're here. BattleBuddiesPod@gmail.com. We're on all the social medias. We're streaming everywhere. We're
Blowing up.
worldwide.
Like Mr. Worldwide.
Like Mr. Worldwide. And oh, here's an annoying thing about Spencer. I think there's a correct way to do the dishes. Yeah, and I didn't used to be that guy,
Yeah,
Kevin.
you're that guy.
But then I got married, and now I know there's a correct way to do the dishes.
Man, that is a fight.
Yeah, dude. No, well, there is an efficiency to it.
Yeah.
Turns out. So that is one thing about me.
Do you and your wife have the same? Are you guys agreed on your dishes?
What?
Like
Hell no.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely, bro. Let me put it to you this way: when she loads the dishwasher, I reload it.
Oh, okay.
I will take dishes out to make it more efficiently loaded, so that I can add more to it.
I get a talking to afterward.
Do you not load it correctly? So you're on the
Man,
receiving end of all
my
this.
brother, like, he really forced a method on me, and he like gave me these long lectures about like, you have to leave a little bit of room between the bowls.
Oh, he's not wrong.
So
Yeah.
that the water can go and make sure it splashes all the way
Technically
inside the
right.
bowl. But Hannah does not agree with that conclusion, in that it's just a fucking bowl and it will be fine to be right next to the next bowl.
Well, here's the thing. Do you rinse your dishes before you put them in?
Yes, we do.
Then you don't need as much room as you think you do.
Don't side with Hannah in front of me. She's right about everything. I just want one thing. I just want the one thing.
You'll get a couple things, dude,
I'll
here
get
and
some
there.
things.
Yeah, I believe in you.
That's fine.
Everybody, we appreciate you.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, Hannah.
Thank you. Aaron is not listening to this, so I can say whatever I want. Anyway, we'll see you within the next couple weeks.
Yeah.
Bonsai.
Bonsai.